It is time to continue on with the 2025-26 season previews today, and we got the Detroit Red Wings this time around, a team that is coming up on a decade of no playoffs in Hockey Town, but for their 100th year in the league, will they be able to get back? The 2025-26 season previews are in full swing. We are previewing every single team's upcoming season. We have now done Anaheim through Dallas alphabetically. We are through about 10 teams at this point, so if you want to see the other ones, be sure to subscribe and check out my most recent videos. But on to the Detroit Red Wings. Again, like I said, they are coming up on nearly a decade of not being in the playoffs. The last time they made it was 2015-2016, so they're getting there. So in 2022-23, which is where we're going to start with this, we're going to go 3 years back at this point, which is kind of wild to me. It's already 3 years ago. Anyhow, they went 35, 37, and 10 for 80 points. They were 24th in the NHL, and that was just a year where the Red Wings weren't ready. I feel like that was outright. That 7 years at that point missed. That was the last year where, like, missing the playoffs was, like, not acceptable, but it was at least tolerable for Red Wings fans, because they knew that they had a really good young core coming up. They had this exciting batch of guys like Raymond and Seider, and I guess Casper was drafted at that time. So it was looking like an exciting roster of players here coming up in Detroit. In 2023-24, they would take a step that definitely kind of feels like a little bit of a step too much now, but still, it was a very good season. 41, 32, and 9 for 91 points. They were 18th in the NHL. They were tied with Washington for the playoff spot, and obviously they lost that. But overall, it was a very good season. It was looked at as a success of a season. They just barely missed out on the playoffs. And a lot of us, I think even myself included, had the Red Wings either very close to the playoffs or in the playoffs next season, and that definitely did not happen. The following year was an absolute collapse. It was a horrible first half, a better second half, but it still wasn't good enough. They went 39, 35, and 8 for 86 points. They were 21st in the NHL. Again, they missed the playoffs. They were in there, though. They were in the mix. They were still a ways back from the last team to make it, that being Montreal, but they were still in the race, and I feel like that is notable. It does suck, though, that especially with how the beginning of the season went, I would say literally from, like, the start of the season to Christmas break, when they fired Todd McLellan on December 26th. Don't ask how I know that by date. Anyhow, till they hired him, just everything was a complete disaster when it came to defense and all that stuff, but things got a lot better under him, so you can only hope that things will be better under him for a full season next year. And speaking of Todd McLellan, let's talk about the management here a little bit. Stevie Y has been the GM since 2019-20. He has built this roster nearly from the ground up. And a lot of people criticize Yzerman where it's been like, oh, it's been 10 years and he's done nothing. We forget that Seider didn't come in there until 2019-20. So that's what, like 5 years out of the 10 years, or 9 years where he's been there. So again, I feel like now, this season, we're getting into the expectation where Steve Yzerman's job should be more on the line, and I feel like that definitely is a factor. But again, like, we look at the full, broad perspective of this playoff drought and say all of it is on Yzerman, but not all of it. We forget that Ken Holland was the GM for 4 of those 9 years. So I do want to factor that in, obviously, and make that known. But regardless, he does still take some of the blame for some of the moves he's made. Signings-wise, I have not liked a lot of his signings. Drafting-wise, and mostly trade-wise, I've liked his trades as well. But regardless, Todd McLellan, as I mentioned earlier, is the head coach. He was hired midway through the 2024-25 season. A very solid coach, one that I am a fan of in particular. I think this guy has the right sense of coaching offensively and defensively, so he's somebody who I think the Red Wings will benefit on for a full year this year. I'm very excited to see how that's going to go. But regardless, the overall trust in this management for me, it's not the most trustworthy management in the world, but honestly, I do trust it. I am way more trustworthy and patient with Yzerman than others may be. And again, that's probably because I'm not a Red Wings fan, so I do want to preface that. But regardless, I have a lot of trust in this management, to be honest with you. Your key arrivals this year for the Red Wings, they made some solid adds. They didn't do anything of too big of a note besides one particular player. The rest of the guys are more or less players who could be some depth pieces and such like that. So let's just hop right in. Starting off with James Van Riemsdyk, Mason Appleton, Jacob Bernard-Docker, the big one, John Gibson, and then Travis Hamonic there as your key arrivals for this offseason. So Van Riemsdyk will be a solid top 6 player, honestly. He could even be on that first line for the Red Wings. I feel like he's going to be a solid contributor for this roster. Mason Appleton will be a good third-line player. I don't expect him to be anything more than that, unfortunately. I am a fan of Mason Appleton. I'm not going to question that whatsoever, but he is a bottom sixer. Bernard-Docker, kind of the same thing. I think he could make this team. He could crack the third pairing. So there's nothing really wrong with that. I like Bernard-Docker in my opinion. And then John Gibson is a massive part to this. This guy is going to be one of the biggest X factors for this team. And I feel like I look at this roster with the Red Wings and I say, what was the problem last year? The problem was defense and goaltending. The defense is still a work in progress. It's getting better, but it's still a work in progress. The goaltending was pretty atrocious. And they have the prospects developing up in the system as well. And Gibson coming in here for me is going to be somebody who's going to be exciting for the Red Wings to watch this year, and maybe only the temporary solution while we wait for Kosa and Augustine to come up. Then you look at your key departures for the Red Wings. And honestly, the guys that they lost are not that big of losses. Jeff Petrie, Vladimir Tarasenko, Peter Mrazek, Alex Lyon, and Tyler Mott. Not a lot of big guys there, I'm going to be honest with you. Jeff Petrie was looked at as a defensive liability for the Red Wings for a while. So I don't really think, even as a lot of Red Wings fans are going to miss this guy, he is off to Florida, where I think he's going to be better than what he was in Detroit. But still, they're glad that he's gone. Tarasenko, it just sucks that it didn't work out because he's somebody with a good offensive poise and scoring, but it just didn't work out in Detroit. And I don't know why. Like, he was playing a lot of bottom 6 minutes. I guess that's true, but like, it just sucks that it couldn't work out, and Red Wings fans would agree. It just, no matter where they put him, it just wasn't working out. Peter Mrazek was acquired at the deadline, so like, he was there for a little bit, but not a lot. It's not really that big of a loss. Alex Lyon was a contributor for a while, but just overall, like, they have too many goalies now in their system. It wasn't worth keeping him around. And then Tyler Mott was like a depth fourth-line player. There's really nothing much more to that with him. But overall, your key departures are not that big of an issue. We'll have to see what happens there, though, with Detroit. Are their arrivals going to cover the departures? I guess we'll find out. So now you take a look at the Hockey News' depth chart for the Red Wings. Now, their depth chart is made by the Hockey News because that way I don't forget anybody or do something stupid. I do kind of disagree with some of the things that they have, though, and I will explain. But regardless, let's hop right in. Starting off on your left wing side, you have Lucas Raymond, Patrick Kane, James Van Riemsdyk, Michael Rasmussen rounding out your first 4 guys. Then you have Austin Watson as your extra left winger there as well. Lucas Raymond is Lucas Raymond. He is a phenomenal player, a top 20 winger in the NHL, in my opinion. Some may argue even higher than that. I think this kid is just phenomenal. He's only going to get better, so I got no complaints there about him. Patrick Kane is in that stage in his career where it feels like he's on the downward trajectory. He's still providing offense for Detroit, but I don't think it's going to be as crazy as it's been the first 2 years, so I guess we'll have to see there, obviously, with him. Again, James Van Riemsdyk, one of the newer acquisitions, is going to be somebody to look out for sure. I feel like he could be somebody who could be a sneaky bottom 6 contributor for the Detroit Red Wings, so I like that move there. Rasmussen, good fourth liner. He has some solid assets to his game. He's got that little bit of a physical sense to him, but also good offensive mind as well. And then Austin Watson, we saw him in Grand Rapids. He did play some games up this year for the Red Wings, was serviceable. I like Watson. I witnessed Watson in a fight live with the Griffins against the Phantoms, so that was pretty fun. But anyhow, I'm a big fan of Austin Watson. You look at your center core. It's actually not that bad. I like the first 2. After that, we'll see. You have Dylan Larkin, Marco Kasper, Andrew Kopp, and JT Compher rounding out your first 4. And then you have Nate Danielson as your extra center there as well. So I want to talk about that. We'll start out with Larkin first. Dylan Larkin is Dylan Larkin. He's the captain, the backbone of this team, essentially. He is a great player. There's no doubt about it. A top 20 center for sure. He is in my top 20 centers list. Those videos will be coming out very soon. I've just been very clogged up with the prospect pull reviews and such. But anyhow, Larkin is great. There's no doubt about that. Marco Kasper, I was a massive fan of Kasper this year. Just seeing him come in and play the way he did. If he started out the year with Detroit, we could be talking Calder. Again, this kid was very, very good for the Red Wings. I'm not saying that he would win the Calder over, Lane Hudson or Michkov or anything like that, but even still, this is a player who came in for Detroit around, I think it was December, and played very well for the rest of the season. So, easier to see, and I'm a big fan of that. Copp and Compher, I have my opinions on them. I think in these roles, they're not too bad, but they are definitely overpaid. And then Danielson, it's going to be interesting because I feel like if maybe one of Copp or Compher goes down, they'll give Danielson a chance. He's been down there for a little bit now in Grand Rapids and also playing in juniors, of course. But I like him. I'm excited to see how he's going to develop. He's somebody who I've been following, and unfortunately, he's in a lot of rumors for trades and stuff. The Red Wings fans love to throw him in their trade rumors and such. But I'm a big fan of him, and I saw him live in Grand Rapids as well, so I'm looking forward to seeing him possibly make it to the NHL this year. And then on the right wing side, you have Alex DeBrincat, Arvid Soderblom, Mason Appleton, Jonathan Berggren rounding out your first four, and then Carter Mazur is your extra guy. So DeBrincat, great goal scorer. He's still got that scoring mentality. Not as great as it was in Chicago, but still, he can rack you up 30 goals a season. That's very respectable there for sure. You need guys like that on your team. Soderblom, I like Soderblom. He's one of those guys who's a little bit under the radar in terms of his game. Honestly, he was playing a lot of bottom 6 minutes. He will get a shot here to see what he can do top 6-wise. Appleton, again, good third liner. This is a guy who I enjoyed a lot on Winnipeg, especially when the Jets were going on their mini playoff run through the first and the second round. He was a fun guy to watch. Berggren as well, good fourth liner. And then Mazur is somebody who I'm hoping will play games this year for Detroit, because the one game that he played, we streamed it here on the channel, and he just suffered an injury literally on his first shift. So that's just the worst luck I've ever seen. He's dealt with that a lot in his career though, but I hope that we will see him in the NHL for a bit this year. But overall, I like the forward core. It's a very good top 6. The bottom 6 is definitely a little bit on the average side, but I still think it's very good. And hopefully you do see some of the younger guys like Danielson get a chance in the lineup and Mazur get a chance, even though they are pushing for the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. I think it'd be nice to see those guys play some games. And now let's take a look at the defensive core for the Detroit Red Wings. You start off on the left shot side. You have Simone Edvinsson, Ben Sherratt, and Eric Gustafsson rounding out your first 3. Then you have William Legason as your extra defenseman there. So we start off with Edvinsson. Edvinsson is top of the line. He is a great defensive defenseman. There is no doubt about that whatsoever. I'm not going to come on here and try and contradict that. He is a great defenseman, and he was a big part in why that defense looked better than it was last year, and even then it wasn't really that good. Sherratt, not a fan. Again, at least it is the last season of that contract, so Red Wings fans will be gone of that problem at the latest by the end of the next season. So again, we'll have to see there, but Sherratt last year was one of the guys, in my opinion, who was just kind of a liability. Gustafsson is okay. You guys will know that if you've been watching the channel for a long time, you guys know that I'm not a big fan of Gustafsson from the days when he played for the Flyers. So, still not really a fan, but I guess we'll have to see what happens there with him. And then Legason, solid and serviceable defenseman there as well, who will play some decent minutes, I guess. Will play some games. On your right defensive side, I wouldn't say it's a logjam, but there's a lot more names on this side of the list that could play games this year. Moritz Seider, Albert Johansson, and Jacob Bernard Docker round out your first 3. Then you have Justin Hall, Travis Hamonic, and I did throw him in there, Axel Sandin Pellikka. is on that list as well. So Seider is Seider. I'm a big fan of Seider as a top 20 defenseman for sure. He's put up some great numbers with Detroit the last 3 seasons or so. So I have no doubt that he will do that once again this year. Johansson, not bad. He's a little bit underrated. He was playing a little bit of third pairing minutes last year. Some second pairing minutes though as well. So he will get a shot there on that second pairing for Detroit. Bernard Docker for me. Don't really have a problem with Bernard Docker. In my opinion, I think he is going to be a decent third pairing guy. He will make this team. Hall and Hamonic feel like liabilities and guys who are just kind of there. Justin Hall was signed to a pretty bad contract, and it really hasn't turned out that great for Detroit. So we'll have to see. And then Sandin Pellikka. I think I'm maybe like over-exaggerating how much we'll see of Axel Sandin Pellikka this year. There's a real chance he does make the team out of training camp, but knowing Steve Yzerman, he's probably going to be in the AHL next season, and that's not a bad thing whatsoever. I think you want to get him some more pro experience before you call him up to the NHL right away. But it's very, very possible that if he goes down there and he dominates with Grand Rapids through the first 2 months of the year, we could see him with the team in December. We'll have to see, obviously. Again, his trajectory is not till probably 2026-27, just by the way Yzerman runs his prospects, but it is something to look at there for sure. Overall, the defensive core, it's better than it was last year for sure, but it's still, by a lot of metrics, outside of that first pairing, it is pretty weak. And then you look at the goaltending. So the goaltending here, you have John Gibson, Cam Talbot, and Sebastian Cossa as your 3 goalies to round it out. Then you have Carter Gylander as your extra goalie down there in Grand Rapids. So Gibson is the biggest X factor for me. I'm not going to try and go into it too much because I do have one of the questions surrounds the defense and the goaltending. But Gibson is definitely somebody who's going to be relied on a lot here in Detroit, especially when Seider and Edvinsson are not on the ice. Talbot was serviceable last year. I feel like he had his ups and downs, but I feel like he's going to be better as a backup than a full-time starter, so I do just want to factor that in there as well, obviously. Cossa will play games. I'm not sure how many, but Cossa will play games. Probably, I would say maybe 3 or 4, maybe is the expectation. I don't know, but again, he probably will play some games here for the Red Wings. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, you want to see him play games. I'm not saying oh, that's a bad thing, but again, you got to just be careful here with his development because goalies are a very delicate thing. So we'll see, obviously. And then Gylander won't see the NHL more likely than not. He's just the 4th goalie here on the depth chart. Overall, very solid goaltending ranks. I feel like it's much better than it's been. And overall, this team is looking solid. So that being said, then, it is time to look at the biggest question surrounding the Detroit Red Wings. And that is, will the defense plus the goaltending metrics improve? Now, I don't even need to read out the specific numbers. I don't even have them written down here. You know that the Red Wings defensively and in net were very weak last year. And you would argue, and I know the forward scoring in the first half wasn't great either, but you could argue that the first half of the season was purely bent on the fact that the defense was just not playing defense. And I feel like a lot of that blame went on Jeff Petrie and Ben Sherratt and such, and rightfully so. You look at the stats, they don't lie. The stats don't lie. When you see that, when Moritz Seider's on the ice, they have better defensive metrics than they do when Sherratt's on the ice. It's night and day. So I feel like if this team wants to make the playoffs, one of the big things that they need to do is obviously start off good, but they also need to improve on the back end. And I feel like with guys like Seider and Edvinsson there, and Sherratt, and Petrie no longer being there, and this is probably going to be Sherratt's last year, you're starting to see some of the guys that Yzerman's drafted come up in there, and seeing Bernard Docker and Johansson there, I think it will improve. I think it will improve by a decent metric, not by a landslide, not right away at least, but at least by a decent metric, it will get better. So I'm hoping with that optimism. And then in net, John Gibson has had some solid numbers for Anaheim on a not-so-good team. I understand you look at some of those numbers they're not pretty, but again, you got to remember that he's been on a bad Anaheim Ducks team for about 6 or 7 years now. So again, I feel like you can't put all the blame on Gibson. And then Talbot, I think, is, again, a good backup. So honestly, will they both improve? Probably not, because that's just the way it goes in Detroit. Will one of them improve? Probably. So, like, I really don't know, to be honest with you. Detroit, it's a very hard to predict team. I would love to see them make the playoffs, but these metrics got to improve. And that being said, we'll wrap with this. Playoffs, standings, Cup. Those are the things that we're asking ourselves here with the Red Wings. So, Stanley Cup, no, they're not ready yet. Playoffs is a maybe for me. I feel like there's going to be a lot of Red Wings fans who come in here and say, yes, playoffs are a definite. They're not a definite because I feel like it's going to be the same bloodbath that it was last year with the wild card in the Atlantic Division. So that doesn't change. Again, if they are going to make the playoffs, they need to have a good start to the season, first and foremost. They need to have a very good start to the season. And keep that consistency the entire way through. And as well as that, too, they need to play good in March. March is like their kryptonite. In 2023-24, they had a pretty sizable lead in terms of the wild card race heading into the playoffs. Like them in Philadelphia, ironically enough, my team and my girlfriend's team, who was a Red Wings fan, ironically enough, we were like both in playoff spots. We were doing all right. And then we both crumbled in March. So I feel like, again, unnecessary Flyers reference. But anyways, I feel like if this team's going to make it, March has to be better. Like, they have just been so bad in March in 23-24 and in 2024-25 that it's not good enough. And again, like, a lot of it factors in. You got to be consistent the whole way through the season. You're going to have your losing streaks there, but you need to bounce back. One of the hardest things that Detroit had last year was bouncing back after losses. Like they would rack up losses every single time. They really couldn't get a consistent winning streak together until like around January or February. So again, if this team wants to make the playoffs, that's a massive factor. But honestly, I'm rooting for them. Like, I want to see this team make the playoffs. They've been a team that I've been a fan of for a while. Not just because my girlfriend's a fan of the team, but they're a likable team. I like the guys on this roster. I like Raymond. I like Larkin. I like Kasper. I like the guys that they're building. I like Edvinsson and Seider and Sandin Pellikka and Danielson. Again, I've said a lot of good things here about Detroit. So they're one of the teams, and there's not a lot of them besides my favorite teams that I hope will do well, but Detroit is absolutely one of them. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on the Red Wings. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed, like down below and subscribe if you're new. We got the Oilers up next and then the Panthers. So we got the two teams that were in the Stanley Cup Finals last year. It's pretty funny how that goes. But anyhow, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.